Hi! Welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Reej and today I am making another video about books. So today's video is going to be kind of like a book review, but not really because I don't really have any cons for the books that I'm going to be talking about. I kind of chose these three because out of all the ones that I've read over the past few months, these three books I felt really left an impact on me, and the ideas and concepts that were discussed in these books I feel like I keep returning to months later and I keep thinking about. And these three were very thought-provoking books that I really enjoyed, and now I want to share them with you. Number one is Eat, Pray, Love. So I don't have any of the books with me because I borrow all my books on my e-reader from the library that was upside down. And Eat, Pray, Love I borrowed because all the other books that I had put on hold weren't available yet, and I needed something to hold me over until the next one. And I went into this like I'd never watched the movie or anything like that, but what I thought I knew about Eat, Pray, Love was based on what the public's perception of the movie is. And to me, I felt like this book was just gonna be a very superficial, fake deep kind of journey of some rich lady finding herself and whatever, you know. I don't know if you have the same conception as me, but I really didn't think it was gonna be my thing because I'm someone who really craves authenticity in any piece of media that I consume, and I thought that it was gonna be a very inauthentic memoir. So I started reading it, and guess what? It is not anything like that. The movie I honestly couldn't get through, but the book is, I love it. Amazing, amazing book. It is definitely one of my favorite books because it hit all of the sweet spots for everything that I was craving in a book at the time that I read it. And the author, Elizabeth Gilbert, she's one of the most genuine public personalities that I have seen. I'm obsessed with her. Like, I've binged her podcast, like I follow her on everywhere on the internet, and I am just so, I just love her so much. And it's because of her worldview and her perspective on life and our existence, and the fact that I relate so much with it. So basically what Elizabeth Gilbert really tries to drive home with her writing is, especially in this book, is the notion that the life that we are given is strictly for ourselves, and that we should be able to do whatever we want with it to make it the best that we can make it. Like, we should prioritize our own wants and needs over others without feeling like we're being selfish. Because one of the things she touches on is that if we're only doing things for other people, we're not going to be happy and we're not going to feel fulfilled. And if we're not happy and fulfilled, then it will be hard for us to be there for those other people when the time comes. So yeah, it was really cool for me to read a book like this because in the past few years I've really struggled with doing things and worrying about what their effect was on other people, even though I knew that doing those things would ultimately lead my life into a direction that I really, really wanted it to go. I was made to feel so guilty, like so selfish about doing something that I knew deep, deep down was the best possible thing for me. So yeah, I loved reading this book because it really touched on that subject, and it was helpful. It was helpful for me personally. So the book itself, it focuses on Liz's journey around the time when she was 30, I think. She went through a really bad divorce. She had no idea what she was doing with her life. She felt really depressed and hopeless and things like that. So she took 12 months out of her life and decided to go on to 3 different countries and live there for 4 months each. So the first 4 months she spent in Italy trying to explore pleasure, and then in India for another 4 months she focused on prayer and spirituality and meditation and understanding existence and things like that. And then the third one, I guess it says Eat, Pray, Love, so I'm assuming she was focusing on love, but I think it was more about like human connection and exploring the depths and intricacies of that. The main focus of this book is introspection. It is less to do with plot development. Like there's not a lot of things that happen externally around Liz, but there are a lot of things that happen internally within her. So the book basically tells you what's going on in Liz's head based on the different environments that she's in. And being someone who regularly self-reflects, like all the time, 24/7, this was just so interesting to read someone else's musings about their own self and their own life and things like that. And I don't know, it was, if you're into stuff like this, then you will love this book for sure. I also feel like reading someone else's self-reflections helps you with your own, and that ultimately helps you develop yourself, because unless you know what's going on with you, you can't really become better. In addition to the main story of her life, she also sprinkles in little interesting facts about random things based on the experience she's having. So when she was in Italy, she went on this long tangent explaining the history of Italian as a language, what events occurred that led Italian to be one of the most beautiful languages. And then also in Bali, she talked about how Balinese society is structured, and it just helps you, like learning about things like that helps you understand the context of the environment she's in, which is cool because it kind of feels like you're traveling there. So yeah, that's the first book, Eat, Pray, Love. Love it. Definitely try it out. Do not believe the reviews. Do not believe the movie. It is nothing like those. Yeah. So the second book is called Educated. It is also a memoir, real life true story that the author actually went through. So the author, Tara Westover, she grew up in a Mormon survivalist household. So not only were her parents super strict and religious, they were also survivalists, which means that they genuinely believed that the world was coming to an end and that they needed to prepare for it. So that's kind of the setting. And because of how her parents were, like they had a very strong distrust in authority figures, so they didn't trust the government and they did not trust hospitals and things like that. So Tara grew up never visiting a hospital, and she had never been to school. She had never received a normal education. And that is until she grew older and enrolled herself into a university. I will let the book explain to you how that happened. The story kind of follows her life, like going from that limited perspective on and like false perspective on what reality is, to going to university and like for the first time learning about how the world actually works, and like her reaction to that and what her process was to deal with it, and how she overcame the struggles and what became of her at the end. Like she's now a PhD, I think she's a celebrated author. So it's a very interesting story, and it's especially interesting because it's true. It explores the relationship between freedom and education and how closely those two things are linked. Like if you don't have an education, in a lot of ways you are not free. So I really enjoyed this book because first of all, it was just so intriguing to learn about someone's life in such an extreme situation. As well, I also found myself relating to a lot of it. Tara's upbringing was very extreme and mine wasn't as extreme, although I still grew up very religious, and a lot of my thoughts and my perceptions of the world and reality were force-fed to me, and I never really questioned them because it was looked down upon to question such things. And like if you go all your life believing in certain things and you get to a point where you realize that wait, maybe those things aren't actually the ultimate truth, it is very hard to come to terms with. And although freeing, it is also extremely overwhelming, and I've never really been able to put that experience into words, but Tara did exactly that. She did it beautifully. Like it was very insightful to read her reflections on it, and it actually helped me with my own. It helped me process my own experiences, and yeah, really interesting. I also really liked that this book was a very traditional, like, rags to riches kind of thing. Tara pretty much grew up with nothing. Like, she grew up not even knowing, like, the first time she ever heard about what the Holocaust was in her first year university class. And if someone, like, can you just imagine how behind she must have felt? But through hard work and perseverance especially, she has now gotten to a position where she probably would never have seen herself decades ago, which is very inspiring. It was also a very inspiring and motivational book as well. Okay, so that's Educated. And the third book that I'm going to be talking about is called The Book of Negroes. It is actually goes by a different title in the States. It is called Someone Knows My Name, but in Canada it is still called The Book of Negroes. And it was named after a actual historical document that existed at the end of the American Revolutionary War. And it listed the names of all of the black slaves that had served under the king during the war and that were being allowed to travel from Manhattan to Nova Scotia to live their lives more or less free. It is what they were told. The actual story follows Aminata, a woman who was kidnapped from her village in Africa when she was around the age of 12 and sold into the slave trade. And it goes from her life in the village, follows her through to what it was like being taken, her experience in the slave ship, all the way to the end of her life where she was actually working with the abolitionist movement in Britain. So this book was extremely difficult to read. There were a lot of moments where I couldn't actually even see the pages because the tears were just flowing. But at the same time, it was such a captivating story that I couldn't put it down. It was extremely hard to read, but at the same time I couldn't stop. Growing up in Canada, you start learning about the slave trade from a very, very young age, like elementary school. So I've known about it for a long time. However, I don't feel like I actually knew anything about it until I read this book. It's one thing to learn about it through a sequence of events, like through a timeline. Like, this is when it started, this is what happened, and this is how it ended, and whatever. But it's completely different to learn about it through the experience of someone who actually lived it. To see what the day-to-day life was of someone who was forced into this position, like what her daily struggles were, what her heartaches were, what her daily triumphs were, if any. Very unique reading experience, and it really taught me a lot. There is a lot of historical research that was put into this book, and the events that occurred are real events, although the character herself is fictional. Everything that's happening around her is true. And wow, it's hard to imagine. It's hard to imagine being in a situation like that, but this book forces you to, and it forces you to confront the reality of what it was. Like, you confront the reality of what North America has been built on. It also really has helped me put into context the struggle of Black America today, and the unfortunate things that are happening to them now are things that have been propagating for decades. And it all started because their ancestors were forcibly taken from their homes. I can't even imagine what it's like to know that that's what happened to your ancestors, and oh, it's terrible. But that's why I'm sharing this book with you, because I feel like it is so important for everyone to read it. It's so important for everyone to know exactly what happened. It's so important for everyone to get as close to the experience of it as possible so that we can understand and help those that are still being affected by it. Yeah. So I think that's where I'm going to end this video. I don't know how long it is. Sorry if it's super long, but hopefully you enjoyed watching it anyway. way. I hope you read these books, and if you do, let me know in some way, shape, or form. If you are interested in more videos like this, let me know that as well. And you can also follow me on my Goodreads account, where I have lists of what I want to read, what I'm currently reading, and I post my book reviews onto there. And I also share those same book reviews onto my Instagram story. So if you want to follow me there, that will be nice for me as well. So yeah, thank you so much for watching, and see you next week.